This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
I'm Garry Birtles, one of the old gits from a long time ago. You've got to tune into Tricky Talks, I believe, so just do it. All the best.
Robertson, the first time we've seen them attack them, and there's Francis! Well, that's what I wanted to see Robertson do. And still Robertson, getting his shot in, and a goal! Robertson!
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping. And the vision that was planted in my brain still remains.
Just a little clip there to represent the mood of Forest fans right now. But welcome to the Tricky Talks podcast. Joined here to reflect on the Nuno news and a whole lot more. Joined first by Mollo. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
And also fresh from an appearance on Sky Sports News about an hour ago is Kate. Welcome to the show, Kate. And how was your appearance on Sky Sports News? Tell us more.
It was so much fun. Yeah, absolutely. Loved it. Yeah, fantastic. Outside the training ground with the Sky Sports News boys, talking about Nuno and Ange and the absolute joy that it is to be a Forest fan. And then a little bit of time on Channel 7 in Australia as well. So, yeah, fabulous. Loved it.
Yeah, you came across... Yeah. You came across really well, Kate. How was the build-up and the nerves? How were you feeling in the run-up to going live? Because you didn't come across nervous at all, and you were very articulate. So tell us more about the process leading up to the appearance.
Thank you very much for that, Simon. I didn't really have any build-up. I think I got a message about 4:00 from Finalysis to say, can you make it to the City ground for 5? And then they changed it to the training ground because Ange was still there and they're waiting for him to leave. So, yeah, that was it, really. So I just kind of had a little bit of a practice in the car. I was like, I think of something positive to say about Ange Postecoglou. That took me a while, but I got there.
Excellent. And, of course, for you, Mollo, Ellie made an appearance on Sky Sports News earlier in the day. How did she get on?
Yeah, she was on. They were doing a debate thing. I haven't watched it all, to be fair, because some of us have to work. And I think she enjoyed it. I mean, she's done a few of them now, and she's bless her. And I think she's on Central News as well. So, you know what it's like. They got their go-to folk, like the Finalysis folk, which is obviously making great strides now. And so she's enjoying herself. She's got to write an article for the BBC and what have you. So, all good. Enjoying it.
Excellent. Hope to see more of you, Kate, and you, Ellie, of course, on Sky Sports News.
We got a mention. We did get
a mention as well. So excellent stuff. Right, let's crack on then. Obviously, we've got to start with the Nuno news, which we all know by now that he's been relieved of his duties, and Ange Postecoglou has already been announced as his replacement. I do want to step back a few hours, though, overnight to mention the reports were coming out of Portugal late last night that he'd lost his job, and that was half past 11ish. And then it wasn't long after that the club officially announced it about midnight. And to quote the official statement, it said, in light of recent events which clearly was a reference to the last couple of weeks, which I found surprising. The club even made reference to that, to be honest. And then the timing of the announcement, I wonder if their hand was forced due to the leaks from the Portuguese media. Start with you, Mollo, in terms of your initial reaction to the news.
Well, a particularly busy week, so I was off to bed really early, and then at about midnight, my wife's phone pinged, and normally that's an emergency. I was asleep, and she went, "Wake up, wake up!" Like, what's happened? Thinking I'm going to have to drive to a family thing, and it was that. She said they sacked Nuno. I can't believe it. I was surprised because the build-up. My feelings are still the same at the moment. Nothing against Ange at this point. Talking about the Nuno situation that I cannot understand. For all the drama that happens, and people like us talking in social media, other social media outlets, Sky Sports 24-hour feed, the most and 99.9% most important thing is what happens on the first team pitch. And that's been really good apart from one recent game. I get people have reached back and said something like 3 wins in 16. So there is that. But am I the only one? And I know I'm not because of other people we speak to that have seen enough in the first 2 games before this sideshow to think we were potentially making steps even further forward. I'm absolutely gutted it's come to it, though not surprised. Egos in football, I assume. And obviously, Ange, I'm not going to judge him on his Tottenham time. Yes, he won a trophy, but they finished 17th. And watching Spurs last season, they clearly didn't have a plan or any idea. Hopefully that was just because they had so many injuries and they were slotting square pegs in round holes. We shall see. But gutted to see Nuno go. We sat 10th in the league. Should really have been 8th or 7th with that silly West Ham game went pear-shaped. We should have at least got a point out of it in those last 10 minutes. It's ridiculous, but that's football and the craziness of it. If that was a normal workplace, you'd sit in a room, talk about it, thrash it out. Rumours are that they haven't even sat down and talked about it and he's gone.
I mean, you mentioned it, egos there, and Kate, you alluded to it a few in the last pod, I think, in terms of just get them in a room, bang their heads together and crack on with it. And it seems as though that didn't even happen and that was beyond them, which is disappointing because they are 3 very powerful and influential figures. And for them not to be able to resolve their issues is disappointing. And obviously it's resulted in Nuno losing his job, unfortunately, because we all love him. I just don't get why they couldn't have at least had those conversations. Clearly, there were barriers significant enough for them to part ways. Don't you think, Kate? And it just seemed inevitable at the very end.
I think inevitable is the word. And like Mollo said, nobody's shocked by it. Disappointed, sad, but not shocked. Potentially they couldn't sit down in a room. Potentially that was egos. Or maybe this decision was actually made a few weeks ago and we're just being let in on the secret now. We'll never know. For me, I want to not dwell too much on the last few weeks and focus on all the amazing stuff that he did and all the fantastic days and nights that he brought us, and also that he is still to bring us, because although he's not our manager, when we kick off in Spain a couple of weeks on Wednesday, that's thanks to Nuno. He took us there. I'm sorry he won't be stepping out to manage us that day, but he took us there, and I'm not going to be forgetting that anytime soon. It's football, it's egos. It is also, you have to say, if I said that about my boss, I would probably get sacked too, which you can't disregard because it does seem to be the reason. It isn't results. It isn't that he's lost the dressing room. It's none of those things that would normally lead to a manager being sacked. It is this argument, disagreement, press conference. It does really seem to be that. And what a shame. But let's think about the Nuno we know and love and try not to dwell on these last few weeks.
You kind of made a point there that it's not results related, but is it? Because I know, with the exception of Brentford, where the performance was really, really good, and to a certain extent, the back end of the Palace game, West Ham was an exception. But you take into account how the last season finished. Do you think there is an element of the results playing an impact in this decision? It seems unlikely, but is it possible, do you think, Mollo, given the fact that the end of last season didn't finish very well at all? I don't think they won how many in the last dozen? It was just 2 or 3, wasn't it, in the last 10 games or so? So the results weren't great. Obviously, they did qualify for Europe, but that was mainly on the back of the form that they showed prior to the end of the season. Do you not think there is an element of the results playing a part here, or is it purely, as Kate said, all of the recent off-the-field stuff?
I think you have to ask the question, if you flip that, if Nuno doesn't say what he said at the in the press conferences, is he still our manager? And I think the answer to that would be yes, which says to me they've had the foresight to split the results from the end of last season, where we had clearly a squad that were limping over the line, mentally tired, obviously not physically tired in most cases. Key injury to Aina towards the end. I don't like to say bottled it, because I don't think we bottled it, because we played quite well against Chelsea for most of the game. Didn't quite get where we wanted to be in the last couple of games. The Leicester game, we can look back at and say we should have won it, to garbage, and we threw it away a little bit. I think it's down to the politics. And I just got to ask Kate a little question here, so not being controversial. Did Nuno say anything that bad that your boss would have sacked you for saying those things? So I'm pretty sure, well, I don't have a boss anymore as such, but I'm pretty sure the bosses I've worked for, if I said we need to be singing from the same song sheet, I'm not being listened to, is kind of the message we were getting. I don't think I'd have got disciplined for that, albeit I wouldn't have said it on national television.
I think that what he said about us not being prepared in the
He was
first...
right, though. He was absolutely right. Why did we go and sign all those players in after he said that, if he was wrong? This is my issue, and I think someone said it this morning on TV that I caught a bit of. We weren't prepared. We were short in certain positions. The problem I have now is that they addressed that, and then it's, what he said has cost him, but sorry to jump in.
No.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Do you think we were prepared?
I think that previous to those particular 2 press conferences, Nuno has always carried himself very well, very professionally. He's been as the gentleman of football, and this was a distinct change to how he handles the media and the kind of things he said, and that's what made it shocking. So you're right, if you break it down line by line, is it that bad? No, but the fact that it's so out of character, I think is what gave it the power that it then had to end up getting him removed. And yes, it, like you say, line for line, word for word, it was the connotations of what he was saying as well. It was the unsaid about it. And that was very deliberate. He is an intelligent man, and he has sat in these press conferences for years and years and years, and he knew what he was doing.
But was he doing it? There's this stuff now, he was trying to get the sack and all this. I mean, he might end up at Man United soon, because they're garbage and need a top quality manager, don't they? Do you think he did it to get the sack, as some people are saying, or more realistically, I felt he was doing it because he felt he had no voice and wasn't being listened to? I think the more that comes out over the years, it's going to be something trivial like one particular player he wanted to sign and ignored or whatever. But do you think he was doing it to be listened to? Allegedly. Mm. But do you think he was doing it to be listened to, or do you think he actually did it to, manoeuvre where he is now?
I think he probably gambled. I think he knew it could go either way, but he found himself in a position where he felt he needed to do that. We'll never know. We'll never know the ins and outs, will we? There's also been a lot of talk about when Marinakis came on the pitch after the Leicester game. That's been dragged up again today, hasn't it? We'll never know. All we do know is it was out of character, it was unusual, and this is the end result.
It will be in the book.
Yeah, I think given what he said in the two press conferences that we're referring to, it was not a direct dig at Marinakis. It was a subtle dig in that he was stating the facts that they were unprepared, but ultimately it is Marinakis who has to get them prepared in the first place. So it wasn't a direct dig. I don't think it was more subtle than that. But I think from Marinakis' point of view, he literally made all of those signings once the European competition was confirmed that they were in, because that determined the budget to a certain extent. So you can see it from both sides, really, both arguments.
Do you think the dig really was at Marinakis, or do you think the dig was more at Marinakis' man?
Possibly both. I mean, ultimately, it's Marinakis who has to spend the money, isn't it? It may be Edu or somebody else who does the donkey work in terms of making the signings, but ultimately paying the transfer fees is going to be the decision of Marinakis, isn't it? And he's the one spending the money.
I think it's one and the same. I don't know if I said this on here or whether I said it to all the other people that, we've spoken to this about. Edu
or Sky Sports News.
Or Sky Sports News, yes. Edu is Marinakis' man. Yeah. That is his man. So he has brought him to oversee all of his teams, all of his football operations. So if you're having a dig at Edu, you're having a dig at Marinakis.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, it's been great having Nuno as the manager. We'll miss him for sure. He's brought a lot of joy to Forest fans throughout the world in terms of enabling them to qualify for European competition for the first time in a long while. So we'll never forget Nuno, just like we'll never forget what Steve Cooper did. So we've been lucky for our last two managers. The new manager, obviously, Angeball, as it's known. I do want to read out a little bit of information around what we can expect from Angeball. I know, Kate, you're not so keen on the new manager, but just to give a very quick summary of the types of core principles of Angeball that I've noted. So he does play a high press and a high line, and his teams press aggressively in the opponent's half to win the ball back quickly. They maintain a high defensive line, which can be risky, but is central to his philosophy. He plays with inverted fullbacks. He did that a lot at Spurs, where the fullbacks tuck into midfield during build-up play. That, in turn, obviously creates numerical supremacy in the central areas where he likes to go a lot. Possession with purpose is another philosophy. They'd like to dominate possession, but always with the intent to break lines and create chances. It's not possession for its own sake. It's about control and attacking intent. He likes to have a fluid attack. So his attacking style aims to achieve various pitch superiorities, numerical, positional, dynamic, and the like. Spurs often used a 2-3 base in build-up with fullbacks inverting and midfielders rotating to exploit space. Third-man combinations is a key tool in breaking defensive lines, using that extra player to bypass passing lanes. And lastly, rotations and interchanges of players frequently switching positions, especially in the half spaces, to confuse defenders and create openings. It also enables a bit of tactical flexibility in terms of the formation that he wants to deploy.
Sorry, just use the word flexibility and we're talking about Ange. Carry on.
Yeah, but it does have its weaknesses, defensive vulnerability. That's the one. The high line and aggressive press can leave his teams exposed to counterattacks, and he does have a reputation for having no plan B as well, and that's been his undoing, probably no more so than last season, of course. So reading those, if you did not think that was Ange whose philosophy it was, you would say that is probably a good, exciting style of play that you would want Forest to see, wouldn't you? I'll start with the positives there, Mollo, because I know, Kate, you're not so sure.
Mate, so, it's what we do. It's what we do.
Yeah, given all of those philosophies of Angeball, it does sound as though if it works, it could mean that Forest play some really good, attractive and exciting brand of football.
Okay, so the positives are almost everything you said sounds wonderful. Wonderful, but arguably the biggest word in the English language is if. I got the pleasure of watching Tottenham twice live last season against Forest, and I'd never swear on podcasts, but they were very, very bad. They looked clueless. At their place, they had a really lively last 15 minutes where they just threw the kitchen sink at us, didn't they? But actually, they were absolutely crap. They were awful. I just think all that stuff sounds wonderful, and it sounds like the sort of thing a 14-year-old kid would say playing Football Manager about their philosophy. These are real players. Do we have the players for that? Is there a reason? I'm picking something from Sky Sports that I saw just after the moment with Kate, as it were, that was on Sky Sports.
Are you saying Kate was on Sky Sports News, Mollo?
I believe so. Far more eloquent I would have been.
True story.
But there was a wonderful thing of the comparison last season of Tottenham and Forest. And we were miles behind on all these metrics, how far you run, all this stuff. Like you look like incredible. And if you saw only that, you think, crikey, that team must have got relegated, that team must have won the league. But the metric that matters is results. Now, don't get me wrong. I was brought up on Brian Clough football, which often was defend properly and hit teams with speedy counter-attacks. Some of the youngsters I've been reading, one or two of the things I've seen today, are talking about, we can get some attacking Forest-style football. It's all rubbish. It all comes down to results at the end of the day. Both teams normally have 30% plus possession in each game. It's what you do with it that matters. So if he carries out that stuff, brilliant. Do we have the players to do what he's talking about? Is it going to create... I mean, they ran... 300 kilometres or 30,000 kilometres, something daft more than us last season. Yeah. There's a reason that all those injuries kept happening. It's not pure coincidence. You can have an unlucky season, or you can buy players that are a little bit crocked. You know, the lad who scored against us for West Ham probably be lucky to get 20 games this season. It's just players that are injury prone usually stay injury prone. I accept that. But some of those players weren't injury prone before they were signed for Spurs, and they've ended up injured. Have we got the right squad to do what he said? We've got a big enough squad to rotate it. I get that. But here's the thing. Tottenham were rubbish, but they lost their best two centre-backs. And that would hurt anyone. Now, I'm going to say, what would happen if we lost Murillo and Milenkovic? And I'm going to add to that, he was sold by Fiorentina because the manager there wanted to play a high line. And he's a superb defender. He's almost your perfect Premier League centre-back. But he's not designed for playing a high line. Murillo might be, but Milenkovic isn't. They're negatives from the positives, so apologies for that. My philosophy will be, I'll sit back and wait and see. I'll get behind him 100% on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to going to Arsenal now with no manager or half a manager who's had a couple of days, or who's running the team on Saturday. I've no clue. But I just don't know if it's the right appointment. When we appointed Nuno, there's a lot of dodgy, is he the right man? But it felt like he was a Steve Cooper type manager who had also took a team to 7th in the Premier League three times now, and into Europe using similar tactics. Ange is about as different as you can get. And I've seen over the years, and we're all knocking on a bit now, we haven't got Chelsea here to keep the average age down, but we've seen teams like Blackburn and West Ham recently change their manager because they want a better style of play. It's about winning football matches, because once you start winning, the style of play will follow anyway because of confidence. Rant over, sorry.
Right, that's Mollo's opinion, Kate. I know you're not so much of a fan of Ange, and he alluded to the fact that there is some doubt as to whether Forest have got the players that can cope with his system. But is there any particular reason that you're not a fan?
Do you know what? I think Mollo's covered the football. And that's absolutely fine. These are all the things that we're thinking, all the things that we're worrying about. Milenkovic is a big one. Injuries, big one. That it is totally opposite to what we've been doing. But you know what else bothers me about Ange? Is we've just covered why Nuno got sacked, right? And it's because he kicked off in a press conference and he went against his manager. What is Ange known for? Exactly that. So people are saying, oh, it's good because, they've got the Greek connection. Actually, oh my goodness, talk about egos in football. I just can't see how this is going to work. I can't see how it's going to work. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we go and smash Arsenal on Saturday. I hope all these goals that we are looking forward to seeing are for us and not for the team that we're playing. I don't doubt the quality of our players. I don't doubt that Milenkovic can do the job that he's asked to do. I doubt whether or not he'll want to, and whether that will mean that he doesn't want to stay. Again, Murillo, yeah, he can do it, but gosh, the injuries. He does beast players, and that is a concern because we had a relatively injury-free season last season. We do have some depth, which is good. Do we have enough depth? Remains to be seen. Depends how many injuries we get. Like Mollo said, we are Nottingham Forest. We are loyal to our club. We will get behind him. I think we all sit here with these worries and reasons why he would not have been our pick, hoping desperately to be proved wrong, and hoping that we have our final in Istanbul, and hoping that we have our top 10 finish, and that everybody's saying, oh, and Ange this and Ange that, and we're coming up with an amusing chant. I've already seen some of those coming on social media. And we've got our Ange Postecoglou bucket hats with the corks on them. All of that. Yes, please. This is what we want. At the moment, it is hard to visualise.
He does win trophies in his second season, though, Kate, as he's done with Celtic and Spurs. So we can guarantee a cup win perhaps next season. There you go. You heard it here first. Or not.
Yeah. As long as it isn't the playoff final trophy. Yes. Yeah. Which is what I said to pretty much everybody that said the second season thing to me today. We've been there. We've done that. Thank you. We'll have Europa this season, and let's do the FA Cup next season, because I don't want a trip to Istanbul followed by a trip to Preston.
Yeah. I mean, to give him credit, though, he has qualified for the Champions League with Spurs in 5th place, and he's obviously swept the board with Celtic. Does that not count for anything, Kate, do you think? And also on the injury front, there are teams in professional sports that historically do suffer from injuries. Do we know for a fact that all of the injuries Spurs suffered last year were down to his playing style? We don't. We can speculate, but we don't know for sure. We don't know what their recovery periods are like, how well they recover naturally, how well they're seen to by the physios. We don't know their training methods, what's going on. Are they being too fast-paced in training, too physical? We don't know any of that to know whether it was his style or not that caused all of those injuries. There are teams in American sports that I follow a lot of that have had injury problems year after year after year. And you might think in American football, for example, it's a very physical sport, and it is. But there are teams generally who have worse injury problems than others, and nobody seems to get to the bottom of why. So we have to take it. Yes, there were concerns with the players and the injuries last year. It may have just been one of those things. It may not. We'll know for sure if Forest have a similar season to Spurs in terms of the injury rate and the number of injuries. Do I think we have a better squad than Spurs last season? I think we do, and I think we've got the depth to cope with any injuries this year. Last year, I don't think we would have been able to. We were lucky. This season, I think we probably have. So fingers crossed, if we do suffer a spate of injuries, that we've got the depth to counter that.
Don't you think that's very position specific though for us? Mm-hmm. We've now got 3 very good centre forwards. We've got, is it 78 or 79 now wingers, 2 or 3 number 10s, a reasonable number of centre mids, particularly when Dominguez comes back. But we've got a big drop off at centre back. We've got 2, I would argue, world class centre backs now. I don't say that lightly, but I genuinely feel that. 2 world-class centre-backs, as we're probably going to see tonight with one of them. But after that, there's a lot of unknown. Bolly, absolutely brilliant in his heyday, but he's not going to give you 20 games on the trot, is he? And if I just allude back to your point about luck with injuries, I 100% agree with it. Let me give you this analogy. If I'm going to drive a car 5 miles to work every day and back, as opposed to my next door neighbour who drives 50 miles to work and back, who's more likely to have an accident or get done for speeding or fall asleep at the wheel?
Depends on the traffic.
Exactly. You're going to get into a lot more traffic if you run a lot more at high intensity. And it's the human body. I know it's my boring sports science background. If you're doing, like Neil Webb was renowned for doing something like 30 sprints per game between 20 and 40 yards, past the centre backs or whatever. If you're doing 50 of those instead of 30, you're more likely to get injured at high intensity. It's sports science, your muscles. We're getting too into it now, I suppose. It's about managing that squad, isn't it? And if he can do that, it may be the best thing we've had since the great man himself. We'll see.
Yeah, talking of managing the squad, there is the Europa League Squad announcement that we were going to plan to talk about in detail, following the names that form part of the 22 senior players. Obviously, that was Nuno's squad, so Angie's going to have to use that squad that he's not named himself. The talking points from that were the omission of Amari Hutchinson and Zinchenko as the key players that missed out. So let's just quickly touch on that rather than going into the ins and outs of a Europa squad that's not the current managers. Is there any justification for Amari Hutchinson, the club record signing, to be left out of the squad? Because I looked at that and thought, on the face of it, you're leaving out your club record signing. But when you take into account all of the squad collectively going forward, and I'm not talking about the defence or the keepers or the defensive midfielders, the attacking players, whether that's midfield or up front, Amari Hutchinson is probably the youngest and the least experienced of all of them in terms of playing either European football or in Europe. And I wonder if that was the reason why and they are overloaded with attacking players in terms of the squad. I do wonder if that was the reason why he was ultimately left out, and it was nothing to do with his actual fee. Kate, what do you think around that? Or is that, or are there other reasons why he was left out of the squad, do you think?
I think his fee is irrelevant. I don't think that is an argument for including him or excluding him. I think the style of football that you plan to play is what you base your squad on. And in that respect, we're potentially missing him a lot more now. I think it was all to do with the shock factor, the discussion points, the arguments behind closed doors in press conferences. It is my take on it. I've not been a huge fan of us signing Amari Hutchinson, as we know, so I'm not that bothered. I hear the arguments for and against. For me, he's yet to prove himself, and if he absolutely smashes it out of the park in the Premier League, then he'll be included in the next round of fixtures, which is, something for him to strive for. In terms of Zinchenko, I believe he is your master at the inverted fullback, is he not? So again, hopefully, we're about to see the master at work, just not in Europa.
I was going to ask you, Mollo, about Zinchenko. Any thoughts, or do you want to continue the Hutchinson debate?
Well, the only thing I would say is there was always going to be a story. Somebody was going to miss out. A couple of players were going to miss out. If it had been Callum Wendo, everyone would have said, well, he's done this. Or if it had been Hudson-Odoi, they'd say, what on earth we did? Somebody was going to miss out, and it just happened to be them. I'm with Kate on all of that, really. I think she's hit the nail on the head. But the second question you asked there, I don't know how fit Zinchenko is at the moment, but then that became irrelevant because of Dominguez, I suppose. He got picked and he's not yet fit, although we know he did like Dominguez, as we all do, terrific player. I really like Zinchenko. Whenever I watch him play, when he was at Man City, when he's at Arsenal, and when he's played for Ukraine, even as a midfielder often, I think he's a really good footballer with a few defensive frailties, which almost sounds like Angeball all over, doesn't it? Whereas he's a good option to have with the two fullbacks we now would say at left back, because I think we've got one of the strongest defensive left-backs we could have, who's a good footballer, but he's not going to win you games in the midfield at this point in his career. Maybe that'll come. Zinchenko is very comfortable on the ball, sweet left foot. You can see the game from a midfield perspective as well. So I really like that signing. When I heard because it was one of those last-minute jobs, I was like, oh, wow, that for me was a wow signing. Because not that we need a better left-back than Nico, that's not what I'm saying, but a very different option. And now if we get an injury, let's say it's Aina gets injured, then you straight away, you put Nico over there probably. I don't know enough about the Italian fella to say that would happen or not. And you've got Zinchenko at left-back. So him missing out on Europe with European experience galore, it's an interesting one. Let's leave it at that. Somebody had to miss out.
Yep, they did. But they both have the opportunity to get in that Europa League squad should Forest progress out of the group stages. So let's keep an eye out for that. Right, moving on. Kate, have you got a quiz question this week for us?
I have got a quiz question.
Excellent.
I'm going easy on you this week.
I thought you'd done that every week.
I know. This is true. So here you go. Keeping it topical. The last time Nottingham Forest faced an Ange Postecoglou side, what was the score and who were the goal scorers?
Okay, let's park that for the moment, shall we, Mollo, and come back to Kate at the end of the show with the answer. Well, it was Spurs, Kate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Last season. So what was the question?
Game? Who were the goal scorers and the score?
What was the score? Who were the scorers? Yes, it was when we played Tottenham.
I can remember one of the scorers.
Okay, we'll let Kate give the answer at the end of the show, Mollo, just in case listeners are struggling with that one. But a nice little segue into our next topic, of course, and not that this is a hint for the last question, but Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White played for England against Andorra earlier in the weekend, I should say. Elliot Anderson has been selected to start again for England against Serbia as we record this evening, with kick-off about an hour from now. So hopefully he'll continue to do the business. But from both of you, just a quick word on first, obviously, Elliot Anderson's performance, because he got voted man of the match. Couldn't have asked for more. But also Morgan Gibbs-White came on and did a pretty good cameo as well. Mollo, what are your thoughts on those two players? First central mid pairing, or first double Forest players playing for England since Euro 96, when it was Stone and Pearce against Spain in that famous quarter-final when Psycho scored that penalty. Can't believe it's been so long since we've had two Forest players in the same team. But your thoughts on the game against Andorra?
It was a pretty poor game, as we know, but I'm of the opinion that was more down to Andorra's absolute packing out the defence. And if we'd have took our chances, and we know Ando's part of that, it probably would have been 4 or 5 anyway. Weirdly, because we see Anderson every week, I'm rubbing my hands thinking, you ain't seen nothing yet, guys, if you think that was good. We didn't see his bursting runs through players. Not that he played, he was absolutely superb in the job he was asked to do. But I'm thinking, people raving about him, they haven't seen anything yet. He's played so much better and more impressively for Forest than he did there. They wait till they see the top form Ando, particularly if they play him in further forward in his proper position. I'm so pleased for Morgan, because I thought Eze struggled. I really like Eze, but I thought he struggled the other day, where he needed to be someone who made things happen a lot more than he did. So positive from a Forest point of view, not so much overall from an England point of view, but tonight will be an interesting one. I don't want to put the kiss of death on it, I genuinely think after tonight they'll be like, wow, who is this Anderson guy? I could have done some of the things that, the simple passing that goes on, that he did a 555 million touches or whatever, but his winning of the ball, his ball retention, and some of the stuff he did really well, his intention to go forward a bit more than England usually do, they were all things we've seen week in, week out, but there's so much more they haven't seen yet, isn't there? Those tight spaces against quality midfielders where he does the Letizier shuffle out of trouble and all that type of stuff. So I'm an England fan. I want us to win, of course, and I want it to be 1-0 with Milenkovic being absolutely awesome and stopping it being 5-0 with Anderson or Gibbs-White scoring.
Another good performance tonight, Kate, from Anderson. And would you say he's cemented his place in the World Cup squad? I mean, he was that good. It's early days. It's only his second appearance, but he's made such an impression. And I don't know if you saw that clip on social media of the manager giving him his first England cap and him looking a little bit shy and doing that speech in the dressing room. But he looks a good bet for that England World Cup squad at the moment, doesn't he?
I would say so, yes, and quite right too. And funnily enough, I was having this debate with the Sky Sports News presenter before we started recording. When
was he on Sky Sports News, Kate? Yeah.
And he said, it's not hard to be good in a game that bad. And I said, well, actually, yeah, it is. And the fact that it was that bad, and he's the one that we're talking about, should tell you that he raised the level of the whole game, and that is impressive. I think it's absolutely justified, all the good talk that's coming his way. And I hope he is cemented in the World Cup squad. And I hope that Morgan goes with him, because we should have two players in the England squad. Our squad is absolutely worthy of that. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and just a nod to Morgan. Obviously, Elliot Anderson quite rightly got all of the headlines for his performance against Andorra. But as I said earlier, Morgan came on and did a pretty good cameo and looked to be quite sprightly in his minutes that he got. Let's hope he gets on again tonight against Serbia. And of course, they're up against their old chum, Nikola Milenkovic, I should say. So that should be a good battle, and see how those two compare against each other. And hopefully they'll all stay clear of injuries. But yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed for Morgan to make that squad as well.
And don't let there be a 50-50 between them. Please don't let there be one.
But while we're looking for positives, Angeball might suit Morgan.
Yeah. If he plays with a number 10.
There you go, found one.
He tends to play with a 3-man forward line, doesn't he? But I agree with you on one thing. We've got the midfield players, haven't we, who work their socks off. You won't find many players covering more ground than Morgan and Ando do. Whoever the third player might be, I suspect it might not be the person who's been starting there lately, the penalty king. We'll see.
Right, okay. So Angie's first game is going to be Arsenal away this coming weekend. You can see that Saturday lunchtime. Are you guys? I guess you'll be there, Mollo. Will you be there, Kate, this week?
I will indeed. The tickets came through this afternoon, did they not?
Excellent. So I think, given the fact that it's a new manager, we don't know what the team's going to look like or the tactics. We're not going to do a deep dive into an Arsenal preview today, but just quickly a score prediction from you guys before we move on.
Do we have to go with our heart or our head?
Why there?
I'm just going to say it's going to be a very, very difficult day, a very difficult game. I'd love it if the players turned around, a bit like they did under Stephen Reid that time, and put in a big performance and shocked everyone. In terms of places we go in the Premier League, it's one of the two places we just haven't yet performed, isn't it? Arsenal and Man City being the other one. They're the two worst places we could be going in this circumstance. It feels to me, when we played Brentford, I think I said we were playing them at a good time. They weren't quite ready. They even less ready than we were. They had all sorts of issues. And with Arsenal, they must be looking at it and thinking, what a good time to take Forest on. But I really hope that's not the case. 3-0.
Right, so Mollo's gone 3-0 to Arsenal, Kate. There is such a thing as new manager bounce. Is it too early to talk about that right now? Is new manager bounce a long-term thing, or do you expect a reaction from the team against Arsenal?
It's never too early for new manager bounce, Simon. Come on, this is what we've got to be hoping for. Let's hope for another shock. Yeah. How can you possibly make a score prediction when we have got no idea who he's going to pick or how we're going to play?
Exactly.
I have got no idea. I am not predicting a gritty 0-0. Can I just go with that? I'm not.
Love that.
Would you? I mean, yes. Oh, I don't know. I am very glad to be there and experience it live. It's going to give us our first opportunity to look at what Ange might be thinking of doing. I don't think it's definitive because of the short period of time. There is the tenuous Tottenham-Arsenal connection. So, you know, the Arsenal fans are going to be very up for some Ange taunts, and they'll be coming at us with all of those. So we need to be ready for that. On the pitch, gosh, I'd love a win. If I'm 100% honest, I can't see it happening. I'm going to go 2-0 Arsenal.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong.
Arsenal are without Saka and Saliba, of course, two of their key players.
I'm changing it then.
Go on, what is yours then, Mollo? Quickly,
0-0.
You're allowed. You know, I was going to go for a gritty.
I can't bring myself to predict a Forest defeat anywhere, so 0-0.
I was going to go for a gritty 0-0 as well. So
that'd be amazing.
We'll see. Right, moving on quickly. We've got a couple of things we left to talk about. We'll start with UK, and you went to see Forest women play Newcastle at the weekend. How was that?
I did. It was great. It was really, really great. It was a good game of football. Definitely of a higher standard than the last time I saw them play. It was reasonably well attended. I think there were just under 2,000 people there, which I think was pretty good. The atmosphere wasn't that of a full city ground, but it was reasonable. There was cheering, there was chanting. And you know what? Actually, the Newcastle away fans, they brought a decent number, and they were nice and loud as well.
That's because they gave them A block.
So very, very enjoyable experience. Big shout out to Deanne Rose, who, what an exciting player she is. I was really upset when she was taken off at 60 minutes because I had found myself watching her a lot. Super exciting, big runs, seemed to be absolutely taking control of the game in terms of Nottingham Forest. So I'm excited to go and see her again. I would definitely go again. It was all round a really good experience. I would recommend it. And I didn't know, but you could watch it live on YouTube on the WSL2 channel. Now, whether that's going to be true of all of the games or whether that was that particular one because it was played at a particular time, I don't know. But is a nice way to access the Forest women and get to know them a little bit more.
Okay, excellent. Of course, Forest women are away against Ipswich Town, another newly promoted team, this coming weekend, with the fixture to be played at the Colchester United Gibbs-White Community Stadium. So those of you who are able to get to that one, hope you have a good time. But moving on to the final thing I want to talk about on this episode, and it's something I've been looking forward to hearing about all week because it's regarding one of our all-time heroes, isn't it? Garry Birtles. Mollo, tell us more.
Well, as I said previously, my daughter got me a present for kind of like an evening with, and two of the lady players as well, goalkeeper, Miss Batty, who looks quite decent to be fair, and the young, I can't remember her last name, Liz, I should know her name, Smith, easy name to remember, who played at the back on Sunday. Garry Birtles, obviously the main draw, European Cup winner, etc., etc. I have to say, if anyone ever gets the chance to meet Garry Birtles in any context, just do it. He's just a lovely, lovely man. And I almost, in the modern age of football, where footballers are almost inaccessible, and back in the days when I used to work at the academy, you just kind of walk in any time. Now they've got the gates and the security, and players aren't allowed to stop, and they're earning more in a week than any of us can earn in a year often, and all that type of stuff. And that's not their fault. No one's going to say no to that. But it has put them as inaccessible to an extent, mostly. It's lovely to see the likes of Yates in that having a cup of coffee. But Garry Birtles, he should do talks to young players. The passion he speaks with about not just Nottingham Forest, about the city, about Notts County, you mentioned a couple of times, and the privilege it was to play football for his hometown club especially, but the privilege he felt, how lucky he felt every day to play football. And it was just an incredible evening. Started out, by the way, I have to say this, I was sat in the car park waiting for Ellie as usual, she was late, and I saw Garry Birtles, walking down the road towards the main stand car park. Sorry, Peter Taylor stand car park, old school. And the security guard stopped him, and I'd already gone in, and they've got like a clipboard with all the attendees, and they tick you off. And he was looking at Garry Birtles, and Garry Birtles was dead calm, no big, do you know who I am? I got out of the car and wandered over. He goes, I can't find, what was your name again? I went, Garry. And I just said to the guy, I walked up and said, mate, this is the guy we've all come to see. This is Garry Birtles. And he's the lights kind of went, The security guard was like, I'm really sorry, let him in. He just laughed it off, Garry Birtles. He'd come on the train. And it'd been bad traffic. That's why he got there relatively late. Not late for the event, but he got there at the same time as the punters. Anyway, he did his piece and some fabulous stories. I mean, some I'd never heard. One or two of the Clough ones I'd heard. Some really interesting Man United ones. I'm not a Man United fan, but very interesting stories. I have a very, very different opinion of Martin Edwards, so I didn't have a good opinion of him anyway. And I've got a particularly bad opinion of him. But one of my favourite stories was a Clough story. He didn't. And it was, I'd never heard it. The whole thing, Cloughie often used to stop the bus and make them walk to stop the intimidation through the crowd where there's no protection. He did it at Ajax in the semi-final of the European Cup. And Garry Birtles said it was insane. They were chucking stuff and there was chanting and abuse. And we were like huddling together. He said, Cloughie looked at them getting a bit scared. He went up to John Robertson, and even this is funny in its own way, and said, Robbo, give me your lighter. Okay. Took Robbo's lighter, went up, grabbed the flag off an Ajax fan and set it on fire. Brian Clough. I was like, what? He said, the players were like, what on earth is he doing? Anyway, they got in, and of course we got through to the final against a very, very good Ajax side. So all these idiots at the moment saying, you only beat Malmo and you only beat this team. That was Malmo, of course, who beat Real Madrid in the previous round. But anyway, and that was probably my favourite takeaway from the night in terms of an individual story. But then, I don't know if I should say this bit, but I will anyway. Towards the end, it was attended okay, but I expected to be a lot more people because it was midweek and everything else. It wasn't really well advertised. There wasn't that many people there, and they did at the end and question and answer and some great questions and what have you. Then at the end, he just said, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah," and I'm heading back. If anyone's heading back towards Long Eaton, then I could do with a lift. And I knew he'd gone on the train, so I turned to Ellie and said, we're going to give Garry Birtles a lift home. I don't care where he lives. And the irony was, I hadn't taken, this sounds really snobby, but I'd taken our run around crappy car. But I just thought, I don't care. This is Garry Birtles. I grew up with likes of Webby and Birtles were my heroes. Obviously, the European team, and Garry Birtles was one that had quite longevity after the European team was disbanded, so we all got that pleasure. Plus, there was a weird coincidence that he lived in the same village that me and Simon grew up in for a short period of time when he was his first marriage was dissolved. So at the end, we went towards him. A couple of people having things signed, but it'd been so accessible all evening that everyone had everything signed. They wanted signed, pictures had all been taken. So there weren't many. A couple of people having a quick chat. I said, "Did you get a lift, Garry? Do you need a lift?" He went, "Oh yeah, if you're going Long Eaton," I think he said Long Eaton way is how he said it. I said, "Yeah." And I knew in my head, I think he'd mentioned he still lived in Chilwell. I said, yeah, it's no problem. So me and Ellie gave Garry Birtles a lift home to Chilwell. And he kept saying, "Where do you live?" I said, "Oh, don't worry, Garry. It's not that far out of the way." And we talked about West Hallam, and I used to play for West Hallam, and one of Garry Birtles' good mates, I used to play with him briefly. He was quite a bit older than me. I was a youngster. He was one of the experienced pros, very fast runner, Man United fan, sadly, but a nice guy. And as we got near his house, he said, "Come on, where do you live? Where do you actually live?" I went, "Near West Bridgford." He went, "You absolute nut. What do you call me? You nutcase or something." I was like, "I don't care." I said, I didn't tell him what a humble guy he was. I don't think he realises he just enjoyed what he obviously did and felt privileged. He doesn't realise how privileged we felt to watch players of that ability actually be part of that. And I know they're only normal human beings, and the current footballers, when they get older, probably will look back and think, "Well, I'm an idiot." But he was just such a humble, fantastic guy. He did a little advert that obviously you guys will have heard, if anyone listening heard it at the start. And what's really exciting is he gave me his email address and said he'd be happy to come on with us sometime and talk Forest in the old days. So I don't want to give away too much away because some of the stories he told were brilliant, absolutely hilarious.
Amazing. Well, we'll look forward to hopefully having Garry on the show at a later date, and he can share some more of those stories, especially from the Cloughie era, because that was hilarious. I've not heard that Ajax one before, but how amazing. Right. Thanks for that, Mollo. Glad you had a good time with Ellie there. We're coming to the end of the show now, Kate. Before we go, can you reveal the quiz answer, please? Remind us of the question. I think I've got the scorers in my head. Mollo looks like he's struggling, but Kate, what was the question again, please?
I tell you what, if this one trips Mollo up,
I was there.
Yeah. So the question was, the last time Forest faced an Ange Postecoglou managed side, what was the score and who were the scorers? Go on, Simon. You go first. You go first this time.
It was 2-1. Elliot Anderson scored fairly early, and I seem to recall it was Chris Wood that scored the other one, wasn't it?
It was. Who scored for Spurs?
Richarlison.
Yeah.
That header. And Chris Wood had a goal disallowed, but the game will forever be remembered for
Harry Toffolo clearing off the line.
Absolutely.
There you go. I went a little bit easy on you this week.
Excellent. Another easy one next week, please.
And I'll say, don't you think there's a little bit of the Garry Birtles about Toffolo, how humble he is, when he talked about the end of that game, how he's overwhelmed with emotion because his kids were in the crowd when everyone was singing a Harry Toffolo song.
Right, Mollo, Kate, thanks for joining us this week. It's been a pleasure. We look forward to seeing more of you on Sky Sports News in the future, Kate. Well done again for that. Everybody else, thank you again for listening. We shall be back with another show, or actually we're going 2 shows next week, one prior to review the Arsenal game and one to preview Swansea. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and bye for now.
Is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.